South Park has been running since 1997, which means over the years, the show has built up a pretty ridiculous body count. And I'm not talking about Kenny. Kenny's basically on a subscription plan with death at this point. He dies, everyone freaks out, and then the next episode rolls around and he's just back like nothing ever happened. I'm talking about the characters who don't come back. The ones South Park just quietly deletes from existence. And the way the show handles those deaths is honestly kind of amazing. Sometimes a character gets a huge dramatic send-off, music swelling, emotional speeches, the whole thing.
I'm gonna remember Chef as the jolly old guy who always broke into song. I'm gonna remember Chef as the guy who gave us advice to live by.
And then other times,
Cherry ho! My name is Pip.
and that's about the moment you realize a character just gets obliterated and the show moves on like nothing happened. Same show, same writers, completely different rules. And the weird part is, that difference actually tells you a lot about how South Park treats its characters. So today we're going through some of the strangest ways the show has gotten rid of them, and some of these get way darker than you'd expect. And starting off, we have Chef. Chef first appears in season 1 as the cafeteria cook at South Park Elementary.
I'm gonna make love to you, woman. Gonna lay you down by the fire.
Whenever the boys have a problem, they usually end up going to Chef. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny explain what's going on, and Chef tries to help them make sense of it. For the first several seasons, that's basically his role on the show. Whenever the boys are confused about something, they go talk to Chef. And in a town full of completely dysfunctional adults, Chef is one of the only characters who actually tries to help them, which makes what happens next even stranger. Because in season 9, the episode Trapped in the Closet airs.
Back then, there was a galactic federation of planets, which was ruled over by the evil Lord Xenu.
The episode openly mocks Scientology, and behind the scenes, that episode caused a problem. Chef's voice actor, Isaac Hayes, had been a member of the Church of Scientology, the same religion the episode had just spent 20 minutes making fun of. Soon after the episode aired, Hayes left the show, which meant the writers suddenly had a character who had been part of South Park for nearly a decade, but no voice actor. So in season 10, Chef returns for one final episode.
Hello there, children.
He's back!
Right away, something feels off. Chef is talking to the boys, but the sentences don't quite connect. That's because the episode isn't using new recordings. Instead, the writers built Chef's dialogue by stitching together old voice lines from previous episodes. And once you notice it, the way Chef talks in the episode starts to sound even stranger. The tone shifts, the sentences cut off strangely. Sometimes the boys ask him something, and the response sounds like it came from a completely different moment in the show.
That's right. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Later! Great to have you back!
Bye-bye. See you later, Chef.
The boys even start reacting to it in the scene, looking confused while Chef keeps talking like nothing is wrong. Soon the boys discover that Chef has joined a group called the Super Adventure Club. The group has completely brainwashed him. So the boys decide they need to rescue Chef and bring him back to normal. But during the escape, Chef suddenly falls off a bridge. For a moment, it actually looks like he might survive the fall, then a mountain lion attacks him. Before anyone can even process that, a bear suddenly shows up. By the end of the episode, the boys hold a funeral for him. Kyle tells everyone they should remember Chef the way he used to be.
I'm gonna remember Chef as the jolly old guy who always broke into song. I'm gonna remember Chef as the guy who gave us advice to live by. So you see, we shouldn't be mad at Chef for leaving us.
And after that episode, Chef never appears in South Park again. Chef's death is one of the most emotional exits in the series, but South Park doesn't always treat its characters that gently. In fact, one of the most infamous moments in the entire show comes from a revenge plot that goes much further than anyone expected. Next, we have Scott Tenerman's parents. They appear in season 5 during the episode Scott Tenerman Must Die, which is where one of the darkest moments in the entire show happens. And technically, they barely appear in the show at all. They're really only on this list because of what happens to them. Cartman ends up in a feud with an older kid named Scott Tenerman.
I said, here, I'll sell you my pews for only $10, and the stupid asshole buys them.
Scott tricks Cartman into buying his pubic hair and then refuses to give the money back. Cartman tries to get a refund, but Scott just humiliates him again.
Really care that much about 16 measly dollars? I mean, what can you buy with $16? My parents give me a $50 a week allowance. This pittance means nothing to me. Watch.
What are you doing?
After that, Cartman decides he's going to get revenge, and for the rest of the episode, he calmly starts putting a plan together. Eventually, he tricks Scott's parents into driving out to a farm.
I came just in time to see Mr. Dinkins giving his report to Officer Barbrady. And of course, to steal the bodies.
And that's the last time anyone sees them alive. Later that day, Cartman hosts a chili cook-off and invites Scott to come try it. Scott finishes the entire bowl while Cartman quietly watches him. And once Scott finishes eating, Cartman finally reveals what the chili was made from.
I'm ready to put on my chili con carnival so that I can tell you personally about your parents' demise. And of course, feed you your chili. Do you like it? Do you like it, Scott?
Scott's parents had been killed, ground up into chili, and fed back to their own son. Scott realizes what he just ate and completely breaks down. Cartman just stands there watching him cry. And for the first time in the show, Cartman doesn't look like the annoying kid in the group anymore. He looks like someone you probably shouldn't mess with. And then things somehow get even worse, because Radiohead suddenly walks into the scene.
Jeez, what a little crybaby.
You gonna cry all day, crybaby?
You know, everyone has problems. It doesn't mean you have to be a little crybaby about it.
They watch Scott crying, call him a crybaby, and walk away. And that's how the episode ends. Years later, the show adds one more twist. In the episodes 200 and 201, it's revealed that Scott's father, Jack Tenerman, was actually Cartman's real dad, which means Cartman unknowingly killed his own father and fed him to his half-brother. Scott Tenerman's parents barely appear in the series, but their deaths created one of the darkest moments in South Park history. After something that extreme, the show sometimes goes in the complete opposite direction, because the next character doesn't get a shocking twist or a dramatic revenge story. He barely gets a moment at all. Next up, we've got Pip. Pip appears in Season 1 as the polite British kid in the boys' class. He sits in the same class as Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny, but he never really fits in with the group. Most of the time, Pip is just standing there while the others run the conversation. Whenever he tries to speak, it usually ends the same way. Cartman tells him to shut up and the scene moves on. That's basically Pip's role in the show. He's technically part of the group, but most of the time he's treated more like background. The other kids argue, Cartman yells at someone, Stan and Kyle react to whatever is happening, and Pip is usually just standing somewhere behind them. At one point, the show even gives him his own episode.
In the small town of Drafordshire upon Topsmart, where a young blonde-haired boy named Pip was on his way to see his parents.
Instead of taking place in South Park, the entire episode becomes a parody of Great Expectations set in Victorian England, which makes the whole thing feel like it came from a completely different show. After that episode, Pip mostly fades back into the background again. He still appears in scenes, he's still technically part of the class, but most of the time the show treats him like he's barely there. Until Season 14. Because in the episode 201, the boys are in town when a giant robot version of Barbra Streisand starts destroying everything.
She's going to get our coffee store next.
Buildings are collapsing, people are running everywhere, and the whole town is basically in chaos. And in the middle of all that, Pip suddenly walks into the scene. He looks up at the giant robot, pauses for a moment, and quietly says one line, "Oh dear." And before anyone can react, Mecha Streisand steps on him. The fight keeps going, the boys keep watching, and nobody even reacts. And just like that, Pip is gone. 9 years on the show, ending in a single background gag. And after Pip disappears in the middle of a giant monster fight, the show moves on like nothing happened. But the next character's death actually becomes the center of an entire episode. Next up, we've got Miss Chokes on Dick. She first appears in Season 4 when Mr. Garrison temporarily leaves the school and the boys suddenly get a new teacher. The moment she walks into the classroom, the boys immediately look uncomfortable. Nobody really knows where to look. Cartman keeps glancing over at the others while the whole room just goes quiet. And that basically becomes the running gag with Miss Chokes on Dick. Whenever she's teaching, the boys are distracted and trying not to react. The class gets awkwardly quiet, someone eventually says something inappropriate, and the whole situation just gets worse from there. For a while, she just shows up as their teacher in scenes like this. Then in Season 6, something strange happens. Because in the episode The Simpsons Already Did It, the boys suddenly hear that Mrs. Chokes on Dick has been found dead. And almost immediately, they decide they need to figure out what happened. So the four of them start running their own investigation, treating the whole thing like a crime scene. They start searching for clues, questioning people around town, and trying to piece together what might have happened the night before. Meanwhile, the adults around town barely seem concerned about it at all. While the boys treat the situation like a full detective case, most of the adults act like it's just another strange thing that happened in South Park. Eventually, the boys discover what actually happened. Miss Chokes on Dick didn't die in some complicated mystery. She died after choking on Mr. Mackey's underwear.
Teacher Miss Chokes on Dick's autopsy has shown that the semen in her stomach belonged to school counselor Mr. Mackey. However, the semen apparently did not contribute to the death, and so Mr. Mackey's identity is to remain anonymous.
Which somehow makes the entire investigation even harder to explain. After that, the school replaces her with another teacher and everything just goes back to normal. And honestly, that's usually how South Park handles these things. Characters disappear, the town moves on, and nobody really talks about it again. But sometimes the show isn't reacting to something happening inside the story, sometimes it's reacting to something happening in the real world. Next up, we have Britney Spears, and this one is a little different from the others, because instead of a background character disappearing, this episode is reacting to something that was happening in real life. In the late 2000s, Britney Spears was being followed everywhere. Cameras outside her house, photographers chasing her through parking lots. Every time she stepped outside, someone was there taking pictures. The whole situation had basically turned into a media circus, where every moment of her life was being watched and turned into headlines. So in 2008, South Park makes an episode about it.
Eat ladybugs. I didn't even know it was there. I can't take it anymore.
In the episode, Britney shows up in town, and almost immediately the same thing starts happening. Reporters crowd around her, cameras start flashing, everywhere she goes, more people show up to watch. The crowd keeps growing and nobody ever really backs off. Eventually, Britney checks into a motel room, she closes the door, picks up a shotgun, and pulls the trigger. But somehow, she survives. And even after that, nothing really changes. The cameras keep flashing, the reporters keep shouting, people keep following her around town. Nobody really reacts to what just happened. They just keep watching. Later in the episode, the townspeople even start encouraging her to try again. Eventually, the episode reveals what's actually going on. The town believes sacrificing a famous person will make their corn harvest successful. So by the end of the episode, the entire town gathers for a ritual. The crowd surrounds Britney, and they sacrifice her so the corn harvest will succeed. Then, the harvest works. The town celebrates, and just like that, the episode ends. Britney is gone, and everyone moves on. Britney's death is South Park reacting to celebrity culture. But the show doesn't only go after celebrities. Sometimes it turns real-world villains into full characters inside the show. Next up, we have Saddam Hussein. Saddam first appears in the early seasons of South Park, but most people remember him from the South Park movie, bigger, longer, and uncut. He's not just a background gag, he eventually becomes a reoccurring character, but his biggest role comes in the South Park movie.
Did you hear the news? A war just broke out up on Earth.
Meet Saddam Hussein, my new partner in evil.
In the movie, Saddam is already in hell, but instead of being punished, he's actually in a relationship with Satan, and the dynamic between them is pretty one-sided.
Come here, guy. Who's my cream puff?
I am.
That's my buddy.
Saddam consistently insults Satan, orders him around, and keeps pushing him to start a war against Earth. Satan spends most of the movie hesitating while Saddam keeps pressuring him to go through with it. At one point, the movie even turns their relationship into a full musical number, with Satan questioning whether he should stay with Saddam at all. Saddam, of course, responds by threatening him again. Eventually, Satan has had enough. He impales Saddam on a spike, and that's the end of Saddam. At least for a while. Because later on in the show, Saddam actually shows up in hell again. He's still manipulating people, still causing trouble, and still acting exactly the same. Eventually, the show kills him off again. And after a few appearances in hell, Saddam eventually just disappears from the show entirely. But he wasn't the last real-world villain South Park decided to put on screen, because the next one showed up at one of the most shocking moments in the show's history. Next up, we have Osama bin Laden. And this one needs a little context, because the episode aired in November 2001. Only a few weeks after the September 11th attacks. Soon after that, South Park releases an episode where the boys end up traveling to Afghanistan.
What a crap hole, dude. This is like East Denver. Jesus Christ.
While they're there, they eventually run into Osama bin Laden himself. What follows turns into something that looks more like a Looney Tunes cartoon than a normal South Park scene.
Look, an infidel.
Cartman starts chasing bin Laden through a series of traps and disguises. He switches costumes and drops props on him, and at one point even pulls out a giant mallet. The whole thing turns into a long slapstick chase with Cartman basically playing the role of Bugs Bunny while Bin Laden keeps falling into every trap.
All right, there we go. Let's roll cameras. Oh, and here's your microphone.
Oh, America.
Eventually, Cartman sets up one final gag. But before the punchline lands, soldiers suddenly show up and open fire. Bin Laden gets shot, the boys head home, and Osama bin Laden never appears in South Park again. South Park has killed off a lot of characters over the years. Sometimes they get dramatic send-offs, sometimes they disappear in the background of a joke, and sometimes they just get stepped on by a giant robot. That's just how South Park works. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more breakdowns like this.